Well, good morning, Jan Lehman. It's great to see you again after we had our lovely session last month. You were our presenter for my Visage group. I'm Bill Vick, Visage Chair here in Sonoma County, and Jan Lehman was one of my recent speakers, and on productivity. And I need to be more productive. I think all of us need to be more productive. Uh, we seem to have so many tools to help us be productive.
Mhm.
I have my phone, I have my computer, I have lots of devices around me that make me productive. I have my AirPods, I've got my watch, and I can be communicated with almost 24/7. And I can also entertain myself, and I can be diverted and so forth. But I need to be jam productive. So one of the things that you were able to help us with is to understand all of the tools that we
Mhm.
have and make them work for us. So
Mhm.
my pleasure to introduce you to Jan Lehman. Jan, talk to us about how to be productive.
Yeah, well, hello everyone. Thanks for having me, Bill. Yeah, it's sort of an interesting place where we're at right now. We're getting a lot of new technology rolling out, which is super important because most of us, Bill, you're maybe a little bit more on the exception side, but most people in a company work in a team environment. And so we're getting lots of great technology rolling out like Google Workspace, Microsoft 365 to allow teams to work together more effectively. The goal really is to move us away from email for internal communication and collaboration. So email has been a great tool for many years, but the complexities of the business environment, email just isn't a sufficient tool anymore to support everything we need to do. So we have new technology that we can be leveraging, but it's going to get a little ugly before it gets better because it's a matter of companies figuring out how they're going to migrate the internal communication collaboration out of email into like Microsoft 365 and understanding how to use the various apps in the correct way. So we've got new communication tools, and that makes it a little confusing to companies. So there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's not an obvious and straightforward path on how to move forward.
It really isn't. I think that what I've seen is a lot of one-offs. We'll get one group in your company does this, another group does something
Yes.
similar to that, and yet they're supposed to be on the same page. Well, they might be in the same book, but they're not on the same page.
It's so true. But it's good. It's actually good that employees are kind of playing with the tech because you need somebody to explore it. You
Hmm.
just don't want your employees to go too far because they can make a little bit of a mess. And
Yeah,
you run the risk of employees being turned off by the technology if you're not rolling it out appropriately. But that is exactly what's happening. People are starting to play with it and make some guesses as to how they should use it.
I do it a lot when I'm trying to, negotiate through Microsoft or PowerPoint or something. I'll click this, see how this goes.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I've completely destroyed my presentation. I got to start all over.
Yep.
But how do you recommend going about doing it? How do you take, several divisions within a company
Hmm.
and say, okay, you need to work together. We're going to use this. We're all going to use the same technology to, speed up our communication and make it sure it's more accurate. And you had quite a success story with a large law firm in
Hmm.
Minnesota. Tell us a little bit about that and how you can get groups to work together, use this wonderful technology, but we seem to, kind of just play with it versus use it.
Yeah, so I'll kind of answer as two separate answers if I could. So as far as the technology goes, it's really important that companies get a pilot group to play with the technology and explore it. And so I'm going to speak
Right.
mostly about Microsoft 365 because we help companies leverage
Hmm.
that tool fully.
Right.
But there's 100 different ways to do everything in Microsoft 365. So it's really important a company experiment and figure out the best way to use the tools for their business. We call that creating your rules of engagement, or think of
Hmm.
it as an operations manual for your company. And so should everybody keep their meeting minutes and agenda items in the shared OneNote notebook in their particular team? That would be a mandate that needs to come from leadership to say, this is the way we want to organize information so we can be quicker at finding everything. So
Repeat
you
that
get
one more time, if you will, Jen. And
a
should this come from like chief operating officer, the CEO? Who should be leading this coordinated effort for communication within a company?
It's a great question. Somebody who understands. So whenever we're helping a company, we always have an executive sponsor and a project manager who is the client project manager. The executive sponsor is the one saying, what are the bigger priorities for the organization when they're working with us? So are we trying to solve a particular business issue? And is it just building out a SharePoint application to solve the business issue? Is that the most important? Or is it leveraging the Microsoft Teams environment and helping communicate and collaborate more effectively? So the executive sponsor is setting those kind of macro priorities. Then the client project lead is the one that either on their own or with a project or pilot team are the ones we're working with. And we're explaining how you can use the various apps. We're recommending how they would probably use it and how most businesses use it. And it's that group that's making that decision. And if they're not part of the leadership team, then they're going to the leadership team to say, this is what we're recommending, because there's so many different ways to do it. So great question. You really, we guide our clients and we'll recommend this is how most businesses are using it and how we recommend you use it. But it's the company that needs to make the right decision on which tool they use and how they use it to drive the productivity.
In our meeting, you mentioned that Microsoft has its system, Apple has its system, Google has their system, and so forth. Tell us a little bit about the purposes of those systems, and then maybe speak to Microsoft Teams. I think that's the one that most people are experiencing and working with. They got Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, Excel, etc. And these all came because Microsoft was one of the very first at getting this Office suite together. So tell us a little bit about each one of those, and maybe spend a little bit more time on Microsoft, Teams.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, Microsoft isn't always the first out of the gate. So Google came out with Google Drive, and Microsoft's like, hey, we need a cloud sharing space for documents. So they started really leveraging SharePoint and OneDrive. And then Slack came out as a new communication tool that was a competitor to Microsoft. So Microsoft rolled out or finessed their Teams environment for improving communication. So Microsoft isn't necessarily always the first out of the gate, but the advantage they have is they're probably, of the businesses we see, 95% of businesses are Microsoft. So they've got obviously a strong foothold, but they also are advancing in that the integration within the application is really powerful. So in the Google environment, it's often very disparate pieces of software that connect very well, which is perfect. Microsoft right now, though, has great integration, which again drives productivity. So we don't sell a Microsoft product. We're a productivity company. We help companies run more efficiently. Using Microsoft 365 is just one of the levers we can pull for a company to assist them. But the whole Teams environment within the Microsoft 365 is where the gold is with driving team productivity. So organization, in my opinion, is the founding principle of productivity. So if you're setting up your Teams environment properly and you have all the files that, let's say, the executive team needs in their Teams environment, then the executive team is going to be able to find things fast. If you have a shared OneNote notebook in that Teams environment for the executive team, everybody will know where to look for static information like agenda items, meeting minutes, maybe standard operating procedures. And same thing with the new communication tool. So what Microsoft is doing is really organizing everything. So we find things fast, we can do things quickly. There's no guessing where things are. One of the things we talked about a lot in your training session or your peer group discussion is that if things aren't organized, people can't find them fast. So right. I think of this new technology, a really important strategy they're doing is trying to organize everything so we know exactly where to look, where to update something so that we are much more productive.
I think it's extremely valuable that people are, as we say, on the same page and know where to get information. And you gave an example about just emails in and of themselves are such a challenge for people. Talk a little bit about emails. If I look on my phone right now, I probably have maybe 100 or more that, I've kind of looked at, clicked at, but I haven't cleaned up yet. And I don't have folders for specific, topics and so forth. How do you recommend being more productive just on emails? Because people are constantly frustrated because they go right to that phone as soon as it, on their computer, something pops up, they leave what they're doing and go to that email. How disruptive is that really, Jan?
So one of the things we always recommend is don't be bouncing around so much. Most people are just busy right now. They're not productive. If I had the authority to call something an epidemic, I would say we're in epidemic status right now, because everybody has notifications on, they're bouncing from thing to thing. And so that needs to stop.
That's me. Being this and being that and so forth. And what
Yeah.
was I originally doing? What was the purpose
Yeah.
of my effort?
And that's exactly the true, Bill. We all kind of bounce, and then we're like over here in our email, and they're like, "Why did I even come over here?" It's so
Yeah.
it's slowing down. It's definitely having a more. I'm going to work on one thing and then the next thing. The other thing though with email and the relationship with this new technology is whenever somebody contacts us and their email is overflowing, I always say email is a symptom. It's not typically the problem. So they probably do need to be taught how to manage email effectively. And there's some great strategies on how to do that we talked about in your group. But typically what's happening is it's the volume of emails that is the issue.
Mhm.
And again, companies should move away from using email for internal communication collaboration. For example, most businesses will, a leader will delegate a task through email. You want to stop doing that and you just want to start using the task management tools in Google and Microsoft to get the volume of tasks. You don't want the emails to be a whole bunch of delegation type activities. Those should be done in task management tools. So if you're slowly moving everything out of email for internal, again, communication, collaboration, it's going to reduce the volume of emails you have. So email is going to be around for a very long time for external communication and collaboration. But even the newer technology, and we're helping companies right now use the Teams environment for external communication and collaboration. So let's say you're working with a customer or vendor all the time. Why not set up a Teams communication, even though they're external? If you have individuals like my team that know how to set it up properly, you have the right security to make sure they can't see what they shouldn't see.
That's
So
exactly
email
right.
often is a symptom.
Well, you know what? I think you're spot on with that, and I want to spend more time on this because this is very, very important. I think many of the leaders I see, they
Mhm.
will have a meeting and they'll decide on a strategy and we're going to move forward. Then everybody gets an email. We're now doing this. This is how we're doing it. Your department does this. Your department does that. And then they
Mhm.
start messaging within their departments using
Mhm.
email
Mhm.
back and forth, back and forth. And if other departments are involved, and they often are, then
Mhm.
they get an email. Okay. So that whole
Yep.
email is kind of like it starts growing
Yeah.
even bigger and bigger. And my
Yep.
email to your email, or I sent you this, and then how important is, how quickly should you act on it, et cetera. So give us a little bit more about when you talk about how to set aside tasks and get away
Mhm.
from email. How can you structure that? That sounds like something everybody would like to know.
Yeah, so in the Microsoft world, there's some great tools like Microsoft Planner that integrates with the To-Do app. And that's often a tool we'll recommend people use for group task management or team task management. But I love what you brought up about kind of we start off with the broader strategy and how do we kind of execute.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we're doing is we've built out a solution for EOS for traction
Mm-hmm.
in the Microsoft 365 environment, because ideally you do want your overarching strategy and your goals to kind of trickle down. And when
Right.
action items are identified, then those need to go into a task management tool. So we've built a whole ecosystem within SharePoint to deal with all the way up at the goals or rocks or whatever they might be, all the way down to transaction level tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's the integration, the power of Microsoft 365. A lot of people think SharePoint is just a document repository. It's not. I will tell you though, Bill, what we're building out in SharePoint could have been done 20 years ago. It's not new tech. It's just companies have no idea how to take a business issue and develop software to solve that particular issue. That's kind of the niche on where we fit, is we're business people, we're productivity consultants, and we just happen to have a strong technology background. So we connect the dots with what's the business workflow that you have issues with, and then how do we leverage tech to build it?
And I think that one of the points that it really stood out to me in our meeting that you facilitated, Jan, was that we already have this stuff available to us. We just
Mhm.
don't know how to use it.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we have Microsoft Teams, we have all of these files and folders and best ways to do projects and get away from all the emails and just constantly calling people and talking.
Mhm.
And it's readily available to us. Uh, you mentioned EOS, that's the Entrepreneur's Operating System. Tell us a
Yep.
little bit about that. That's a good way to organize your business, I think.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of EOS. So I think of EOS as really macro organization, and what we do is kind of micro organization. We have
Mhm.
great alignment. In fact, one of the leaders, Mike Payton, within the EOS community, quoted has a great quote in my book about the synergies between the EOS organization, and CTC productivity. So I know whenever I find a leader of somebody that's in a CEO peer group, a wonderful group
Mhm.
like yours, Bill, and they're in EOS, they use EOS, that's the ideal client for us, because it means they're vulnerable, they're open to ideas from
Right.
their peers, and they are looking for structure. And so we just happen to also have built out a piece of software that can be used actually to help facilitate that EOS methodology.
Excellent. I'm a fan as well. And Jackie Kibler of EOS Implementer
Mhm.
spoke to my group last year and
Yay,
well
good.
received. And the idea of having the right bus, right people on the bus in the right
Yep,
seats, and how you make that happen. And
yep.
key to all that is communication. Tell us about the success story you had with that large law firm.
Yeah,
I'm going to say
yeah.
I really thought that was just perfect.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I just love that story. So, and that's the storyline of my book, as you know, is about this particular leader. And the goal is my goal is not to come in and create pockets of productivity, to have this one little person in this department productive and this person department productive. In fact, it's not really possible for somebody to be fully productive unless the whole team's on board and rowing the same direction. So my philosophy is you need a leader to embrace the ideas, trickle down the ideas throughout the organization, role model them, and empower people. And so the storyline in my book is about a managing partner of a 50-person law firm who bought into all the ideas and concepts and was willing to embrace it, role model it, empower it, and make it part of his culture. And the storyline with the book ultimately is that the entire law firm has been 30% more efficient. And
That's
I give the
huge.
credit really
Huge.
to the managing partner, because I can get in there and figure out the root cause of the issue. I can identify what they need to do, and I can help individuals. But if you really want productivity on steroids, you need leadership to say, this is part of how we're going to work going forward. So I had the gentleman actually at my book launch party in February, and it's been 9 years now. And he said they're still tracking at a 30% increase in productivity. So this stuff sticks around if leadership is willing to embrace it and make it part of the long-term culture.
And one of the things that you said that I thought really stood out is that the employees are much happier
Oh, so much happier.
because they
Yeah.
find more
Yeah.
time. They actually find time. And then speak about focus time, the importance of that.
Yeah, there's a tight relationship between productivity and employee engagement. And we figured that out because we do a lot of surveying of our clients after we coach them and do training. Just this month, I had two attorneys that, let's see, one of them was 31% stress reduction, 31% job satisfaction increase after coaching. The other one was a 31% increase, I think, in job satisfaction, and their time had gone up by over 21%. They have over 21% more time in their day. So there's a lot
Wow.
of great
That's
stats that we're
huge.
getting.
That's huge.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And the key thing is you got to give me a willing and interested participant. But I tell you, if somebody's willing to be more productive, we can do magic for sure. So so there's a huge relationship between the productivity and employee engagement, job satisfaction, and the book talks about that as well. And again, that's part of our philosophy. The fun thing about our book, I don't know if people notice this, but so the name of the book is Work, Start, Do More. And the whole key thing here is that when your return on investment, so your return key is happiness. So a little subtle hint to that. So it's about productivity and
I have
engagement.
your book right here.
Yay, I
There
love
you
it. I
go.
love
And
it.
I'm reading it and trying to be more productive. And my group says, Bill, you need to be more productive.
I love it. Yeah, it's super important. And you mentioned focus time, Bill. That one, it's honestly a simple concept, and many productivity consultants talk about the concept. Again, my goal is to get companies to embrace it and make it part of the culture. But it's a matter of just proactively blocking time for
Mhm.
quiet, uninterrupted time. I think the difference, the spin I often put in there, though, is you don't want to just block any old time of day. You don't want to just block 4 to 5
Right.
o'clock, because 65% of the population are more productive in the morning. So it's about proactively blocking the time of day when your brain is the sharpest, we can do your best work. You're typically 4 times more productive. And so it's a matter of prioritizing your task and making sure you're picking that one big thing you're going to do during focus time, turning off notifications, staying focused, getting it done. And that's one of the things that Doug, who is the storyline is about in the book, said during the book launch party. Again, 9 years later, his focus time was one of the most pivotal thing for them. But he allowed people to be willing to turn off notifications so they could stay focused. He also allowed them to have like 3 or 4 hours of focus time throughout the day. if you are in a billable environment, you are the production line, right? So you
Correct.
really need more than an hour a day. Most leaders, most individuals in a company deserve at least 1 hour, and that is where we're seeing job satisfaction going up. If you give everybody in your company 1 hour to do their most important work, they're typically not going to have to do, things after hours because they're getting their most important work done throughout the day. But if they're in back-to-back meetings throughout the day, the only option they have is to work overtime or work on weekends.
Jan, today with work from home and the return to office concept, and then I was at a meeting the other day, and a law firm was talking about the employee's responsibility on working from home and how to track all that. I would think that your program, CTC Productivity and Working Smart and Doing More, would apply to that in its space, because one of the problems that I think employers and employees have is that, am I really focused and working? Am I giving you my full attention and my time right now, or am I actually doing something else? And and that is very much human nature. So there's a way that your tools and the way that you organize things does both of those. It keeps you productive, but it also gives you that focus time. And I think it reduces stress overall for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I think the pandemic was really an interesting time for all of us to learn a little bit more about ourselves. And many people figured out they're more productive at home, and many figured out they're less productive at home.
Exactly.
So I personally believe it's best for an organization to allow that flexibility for people to be, if they work from home more productively, at least give them some opportunity to work from home. Doesn't mean maybe the whole week, but they should have the opportunity if they can do better work there. So that's where leaders offering that flexibility is really important. But what I always say is the people that you think are unproductive at home typically were the ones that were unproductive in the office. You just thought they were productive because they were sitting at their desk, and you assumed that they were actually productive. So usually, if you can't trust them in the office, you can't trust them at home either.
Trust goes and where we trust it. Now,
Yeah, and one other thought on that, Bill, just really quick. I know a lot of people, my apologies, I cut you off. A lot of companies, a lot of leaders are asking me, should we do those, use that software where it tracks keystrokes? And we work with knowledge workers in the office environment. And typically knowledge workers, the less keystrokes, the more productive they are, because they're actually thinking, strategizing. Yes, there's some keystroke opportunity, but be careful what you incentivize.
And that came out in that meeting with the law firm here. They said that it varies from employer to employer, but some employers are like you're saying, if your hours are 9 to 5 and you got an hour for lunch, then they're actually monitoring your keystrokes and everything else about you from the times you're supposed to be working, all the way to the other extremes, like we trust you, the work will prove itself. So concept I wanted to just chat with you a little bit about Chat GPT and augmented intelligence or artificial intelligence, however you want to say that. How is that going to impact, or does that impact for your work that you do with people, and then CTC productivity in general? How do you see that?
It's perfectly aligned with us, because our goal is leverage technology where it makes sense to drive productivity. So, and we always say automate time-consuming repetitive tasks. So the whole idea of having technology go out, do the research for you, and come back with information makes a lot of sense for us to explore. Of course, there's ethical issues and a lot we need to figure out here, but Microsoft is actually building out their new version of their AI called Copilot, and it will be integrated into Word and all the various tools that were used. So it's something you actually can pull in and use, just like other existing technology you can find in Microsoft. So I'm excited about it. I'm luckily not the one involved in the ethical conversations around it and some of that kind of stuff. But I'm excited to explore it. And we've really been using artificial intelligence for a while now. And so Chat GPT is just one more flavor of it, which is great.
You know what GPT stands for?
I don't actually.
Most people don't.
What is it?
And I just learned it this past week. It's generative pre-trained transformer.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. I've never even thought to ask. I appreciate that.
Generative pre-trained transformer.
Okay.
So it's not quite Skynet and Terminator, but it's
I love it.
It does have its own name, GPT. Well, Jan, tell us about your background. I mean, you've got an extensive background. Tell us a little bit about you and where you've been and all that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I have been very blessed. I've had a wonderful career. So I graduated with a degree in operations systems management from the Kelley School of Business. So I have a focus on process improvement, technology, and business. And then I also got a degree in psychology. So many of the clients that hire me typically or hire my company typically do it because they love kind of that intersection of those, because it's if you don't really understand people and how people think and how to change habits, you can't really help them adopt and use software differently. You can't really
Exactly.
get to the root
Yep.
cause of their issues. Why are they a perfectionist or a procrastinator? So my background, I'm very lucky there. And then I went to work for Accenture, and then to Kraft Foods. My last position with Kraft before I started my business, I was the director of information systems and information technology for all of the Scandinavian countries and Finland. I worked for Kraft Foods International at that point. I was an expatriate working with them. I had over 60 employees across Scandinavian countries. And if you notice the distinction there between IT and IS, IT is typically the folks that are dealing with the network, the infrastructure.
Mhm.
IS are the people that are listening to the business issues and developing software. And that's the niche on where we fit. And many organizations don't really have people internally that do that as much. So we often get brought in so they can just say, here are our business issues, and we can help connect the dots between how they can solve the business issues with the Microsoft 365 platform. So,
So tell us a little
so
bit more
yeah.
about IS. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
information systems. So before software as a service was really a thing where you could just buy a piece of software off the shelf, most companies had an IS department, information systems. But those departments have shrunk, which makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot more sense just to buy a piece of software off the shelf. But what I'm noticing in organizations is they're missing that person with that skill set. So that's often the
Mhm.
conversation I'm having with my CEO clients, and when I'm in CEO peer groups like with yours, is the CEO often will buy into this technology and they'll pass the baton to potentially the wrong person in the organization that isn't excited about technology, or they don't understand how to connect the dots. Maybe they're more in an IT role and they don't
Mhm.
know the business workflow, or it's less of a passion for them. So this it's been kind of just an interesting observation I've had, that we're missing the person to connect the dots between the business issue and the technology in companies. And every company really needs that person. They don't need to be experts in Microsoft 365. Hire CTC to help. They don't need to be experts in HubSpot. Hire a HubSpot expert. But they need to know enough of what are the business issues, and then what can technology typically do, right? So they know that that would be an area to look into. But it's a changing world right now. But that's a job opening that's missing in a lot of businesses right now, in my
You know,
opinion.
and maybe with your work at CTC and Jan, and we get the word out. The IS role will come back and
Yeah,
kind
in a
of start
different flavor.
embracing it.
In a different flavor. It doesn't make sense for companies to be developing their own software, but they need that leader role that has that higher strategic skill set
Mhm.
and understands enough about technology, and they're passionate about the technology.
Excellent.
So yeah, it won't be a full blowing out of building an IS department again, because that doesn't make sense, but definitely somebody with that skill set at the top of the IS department.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Jan, I know you'll be speaking to my Provisors Network as well. So that's
Yeah.
something we look forward to. And you are located where?
I'm in Minneapolis, St. Paul. My
St.
team
Paul.
is all over the country, though. We're a 100% remote virtual team. So, and
Absolutely.
we do everything virtually, so it's all
Like
good.
we're doing this right here,
Yeah, what'd you say?
like we are here
Yeah,
virtually.
exactly, exactly. Yep.
Well, Jan Lehman, you're a absolute productivity master. I feel like every
Mhm.
time I get with you, I'm sharper, better, and more productive. Get Jan's book, okay, if you can. CTC Productivity. More importantly, reach out to Jan. And what's the easiest way to get in touch with you, Jan?
Yeah, ctcproductivity.com. So where's my sign? So that's the
There it
name of
is
the
right there.
company.
Yeah,
ctcproductivity.com is definitely the website to go to get in touch with me. You can get a link to buy the book. The book is out on Amazon. It's also out Barnes. It's in a lot of
yeah.
places right now, but Amazon's probably the easiest. So, and
Outstanding.
the name of the book is Work Smart, Do More, because that's not always so obvious. So Work Smart,
Work
Do
smart,
More.
do more.
Yep,
There
and
you
it's an
go.
Audible ebook and regular old fashioned paper copy.
There you go. I love it. And the title of my sessions that I have with leaders like yourself, Jan, It's called You Are Not Alone. Okay. So if you want to know, you go to You Are Not Alone. And I would just like to say to the audiences watching this, you're not alone, and you'll know how to connect with others efficiently and more productively if you follow CTC Productivity and Jan Lehman. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll say
Thanks,
so
Bill.
long for now.